Hello and welcome to another episode of Talking Tropes. I'm Hannah.
I'm David, and we have a special guest with us. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, hi, I'm Talia. Nice to hang
You
out
may
with you guys.
remember Talia because we had her on a podcast a couple years ago on our podcast about crossovers. But since then, she has come out and begun transitioning, and it's all very, very exciting.
Yeah, so happy to
very-
have you back.
Yeah, very exciting. It's very funny to be on a podcast, both like having an episode in the past where I didn't transition and then a new one where I did. So it's like crazy.
Yeah.
We're bookending your
My life.
experience.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yes, but we wanted to have Talia on partly to talk about this new Netflix show that has gained some notoriety. There was a big write-up about it in the New Yorker, and then there were a lot of think pieces after people went to watch it, sort of saying that it plays into some uncomfortable tropes, and we'd like to talk about uncomfortable tropes here and really break them apart and deal with them.
There's a hidden, invisible, uncomfortable sandwich between the talking tropes.
Yeah.
Right.
It's great because some of the shows that use the worst tropes are also horrific shows. Like they're just like
Right.
bad, like bland and boring, beyond just being like problematic in so many ways.
And this is no exception. This is the show Behind Her Eyes on Netflix. It was written by Steve Lightfoot, who has done a few other shows. He did Hannibal and The Punisher. So shows that other people like that I have not been able to get myself into. And it's based on a novel by Sarah Pinborough. And she's a British author, and it sort of tells the story of a typical romance plot of a secretary working in London falls for her boss who's married, and then they have an affair, and then things get complicated when she befriends her boss's current wife.
Yeah, crazy shit, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, it's very consciously playing into those like romance novel tropes that without adding too much in terms of like complication. And then throughout it, you're not sure who's good and who's bad. And then at the end, there is a double twist, is what they refer to it. You find out that the wife character has the ability to switch bodies with people through dreaming,
Astral project.
through
Yeah,
astral
David, get it
projecting
right.
And
into other
astral-
people's
and
bodies.
A consequence of astral projection in this universe is the ability to switch bodies.
I see. And so then the double twist is you find out that the wife character was not the wife character at all, but a different character named Rob, whom she met at a rehabilitation and mental health clinic, and befriended, and then Rob switched bodies with her and then killed her in order to seduce her husband.
You can already see where this is going if anyone's
Right.
paying attention.
So I mean, on the one level, this is just it's an out of nowhere twist that is just designed to get people talking about your shitty book. On another level, it's a twist that relies on this idea of gender being fixed to the body, and that to change gender is to steal someone's body and then to use that body to commit crime. So it's crime trans.
I mean,
Trans crime.
the fact there is the slogan "Be gay, do crime," but not like this.
No, not
this
like
is not.
this. Not
This
like
is not
this.
the intention.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, there have been multiple think pieces written about why this was not a good look for Behind Her Eyes, the Netflix series. On the one level, it's just sort of saying that like a gay man who is attracted to, this sexy
Straight guy.
Scotsman, uh, would then just sort of trade bodies with a woman in an instant just to gain access to heterosexual marriage with that person.
Yeah.
So that's like, on the one hand, it's sort of, there's a homophobic element to it, and then the idea that even if you're not specifically saying that Rob is a trans woman, that he is stealing a woman's body and invading women's spaces
And tricking a straight man into having
and
sex with
tricking a straight
him.
man into
Yeah.
having sex with him.
Is
Yeah.
a common turf talking point.
It's a common trope in also in media in general to like I mean Lindsay Ellis did a really good video on this recently about like transphobia in media and like covered like Silence of the Lambs and a bunch of like references to like quote unquote trans characters from like 20th century media, and it's always like, haha, tricked ya, joke's on you, buddy. This girl you thought was a girl has a penis. Wing, and it's like, then the audience is supposed to laugh.
Or wanting to not have a penis makes you psychotic.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, in the spirit of plugging other people's content on the topic, I'd also like to plug ContraPoints' video on J.K. Rowling, which in some ways can kind of function as a little bit of J.K. Rowling apologia, but it certainly interrogates the history of the trope of the trans killer and trans crime. So definitely check that out as well. But I thought we could start just by sort of, explaining a little bit more about what it's like to watch this show and what maybe the appeal would be to some imagined audience. Why the twist?
I personally can't speak to the appeal, but we haven't explicitly brought it up yet. But at least in the Netflix adaptation, Louise, the woman whose body is stolen at the end, is a Black woman. And so it just really adds like an extra bit of like digging the knife in and twisting it when we're talking about how problematic this show gets.
Only is this homophobic and transphobic, but it also is racist.
It's really racist.
It's just like,
I mean, and I think because the twist kind of comes pretty late in the story, at least explicitly, because there are hints earlier, but the explicit twist comes later. The like total obliviousness of like, it's clear there was no Black writers in this room, because like half the time I was watching this, I'm like, how come she is not looking at these two crazy white people and going, this is some crazy white people shit. Like, I'm not gonna befriend my boss's wife while I'm having an affair with him. That's insane.
Right. I mean, the response from Black Twitter was a lot of variations on the theme of, this is a story about why people should mind their own damn business.
Right.
Which is certainly true. But I mean, it's sort of a staple of the sort of, erotic thriller, right? That you have the characters always need to be like investigating each other for their past crimes and like, oh, did they kill someone? Oh, did they rob somebody? I don't like, did they steal someone's identity? And it's always stuff like that in these, erotic thriller novels.
And I think for me, going, because this is so I think adding some context of what this is a limited series. So there's only 6 episodes. They're an hour long, and it's, it was, I think, produced by the BBC, or like it's a British, like it's produced by Netflix, but it's like
it's a British production, but I don't think it's related to the BBC.
Gotcha. So it's a British production studio. So obviously any trans person or anyone who's like pays attention to the news is like, wait a minute, British television, transphobia, and then putting two and two together, you can understand the lore of Turf Island has come into media. in full
Turf
force.
Island. I haven't heard that
Yeah.
one.
Oh, you
That's
haven't?
a-
Oh, it's common across.
That's an
Trans
Abigail
Twitter.
Thorne. It's an at least I was introduced to it
Yeah,
through
she
Abigail
mentioned it,
Thorne's videos.
and now all of trans Twitter uses it all the time. I have like there are people I talk to from the UK on trans Twitter, and it's not great what's going on over there. So
Yeah.
this coming out at like the time when they're they're putting harsher restrictions on trans medication, and there's more culture war bullshit attacking trans people. This is it's no coincidence essentially that this would come out at this time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like you don't really notice it until the last two episodes, barely even the second to last episode. You notice it in the last episode in the last 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And most of the show for me is like, because I'm not a big romance thriller person, but even still, most productions or most shows that I do watch can kind of keep me engaged. There was nothing keeping me engaged and attracted to these characters at all.
Really?
Yeah, maybe it's because I knew kind of like I didn't know the twist. I didn't know I knew that there was there was like a little premise bubble and it mentioned astral projection, and I knew there was transphobia involved in this. But it didn't there was no unveiling of it in the first two to I think the third episode as well, where it was just it just did not keep me attracted to the show.
You were just thinking, hurry up and get to the transphobia so I can stop watching this.
Hurry up and or not even that. Hurry up and get to the supernatural aspect of this, and at least make it like I thought this was going to be a guy I thought Rob was going to be doing this the entire show with a bunch of different people, and and Louisa had to figure it out and crack it down, and that's what the whole thing was going to be about. But no, it was just four people. It was just three people involved in the whole situation. It's a love triangle story that attacks mental illness, that attacks gay relationships, that attracts trans people, and then in the end just comes out and does a racism.
Yeah, just steals a black woman's body. It's fine.
It's lazy in a lot of ways, and I just felt really bored in a lot of the earlier episodes because I just wasn't attached to Bono's daughter.
Is that who that? Is that who that was?
That's who Adele is.
Adele is Bono's daughter.
Yeah, she's weird. I will say, the actress who plays Louise, though, Simona Brown, I could just watch her for hours. I thought, despite the material, she turned in a really good performance, personally.
She seemed great. Was just the material that she was given seemed this is a good actress who can do good television.
Do the acting.
Do the acting, and
Simona Brown's gonna be in something else soon, I think. Something that just came out.
Really?
Run, or no, not Run. What was it? No, I guess I'm wrong.
Yeah.
I guess I saw a trailer for the television show Run from
no, she's done a lot of TV miniseries, it seems from her IMDb page.
Classic British television.
Yeah.
It's a bunch of just TV miniseries where actors and actresses in the United States who do who do TV miniseries, no one talks about them.
Right.
But I do think that there is something to analyze in the first 5.5 episodes before the twist is revealed, because I think it is about something. There are themes that even if you don't know the twist, you can identify, which it seems to be. It's a story about manipulation, first of all, but it's also this story about making assumptions about people. Because the whole point is that, Louise can't decide if it's the husband or the wife who's the creepy controlling one, They're both sort of acting in weird sort of controlling ways. Whereas Adele is portraying herself as a victim of marital abuse, of domestic abuse. it's secretly her manipulating him into abusing her. So I think there are problematic tropes even before we get to the twist, in that
Right.
we're dealing with this story about, don't judge that really obvious publicly, like everybody knows that he's an abuser, because he might secretly have a trans wife tricking him into being an abuser.
Yeah.
Jesus, that's like, it's so weird to think about it like that.
I mean, I think you're right. Like,
Yeah.
it's definitely like, oh, don't assume anything about anyone, but also, it's the problem with these thrillers is that you have to keep questioning and digging deeper to get that sense of narrative catharsis. But like in reality,
yeah, so
digging
it's like
into people's
first
past like this is like a huge invasion.
Exactly. So like first, Louise is, thinking, oh my God, this husband guy, he's telling her that she can't leave the house. She's saying that that she's not allowed to, spend any money or have any money, like, but then you find out that she controls some of he controls all of her money and all of her finances. And she used to be wealthy, and then her parents died in a fire, and it kind of seems like maybe he burned them to death to get to her.
He went in
and there's
saved
all of these
her,
misleads and red herrings.
Burn mark on his arm, and it's like, where, like in the first episode, you're just like, where'd you get that thing? Where'd you get that thing, buddy?
And like they're in this horrible strained marriage together, and the show keeps refusing to answer really like why it got this way, because we're shown flashbacks of them being truly in love, it seems.
Right. And then you're supposed to think, oh, what happened is she is a murderer and she murdered her friend Rob, because he's not in the show anymore, but we have his diary. So you're supposed to think, oh, Adele killed Rob, and that's why he's grown cold and distant, either because he killed Rob in jealousy and can't go to the police about it, or can't leave her or she'll tell the police, or she killed Rob and he doesn't want to turn her in but can't see her the same as she was.
And
it's like neither of those.
And like even in other shows where you have those similar tropes, like the relationship is like it's very obvious to even people just like observing the relationship that like, oh, there's something fucked up about it, where it's like Adele saying, hey, I love you, hey, I love you, hey, I love you, and he just says nothing, like just straight up. It's like almost hilarious how dramatic a difference that is. Like she says I love you, he says I know, and then walks to work. Like that's like the first episode, and I'm like, oh, okay, so they have a shitty relationship. All right,
you just think it's a loveless marriage.
It's a loveless marriage. That's it. Yeah. That's it. And like I like, for me, loveless marriages are just like an overplayed thing, because it either demeans the woman in that situation, which in this case it is doing, because the entire time it's making you think she's the crazy one, she's the one doing it, or he's the one that's like secretly abusing her and then showing that abuse on television without like dealing with it in any effective way, is also like a common trope that you see in media. So it's like both sides of it are not great.
I want to return to the point that you were making, Hannah, about black bodies, black women's bodies.
Yeah, I mean that's the biggest vibe that I got from this, throughout the course of it, before the sort of awful trans reveal at the end. Is just like, it's Get Out, like Louise's friendship with Adele. Adele is like doing all these things to help her like improve herself, like, oh, you must stop having these nightmares, here's how you do it, and like, oh, you must like start coming to the gym with me and like working out, and let me improve your body before I inhabit it, like it's also like it's very obvious, like in their first like meeting, and in their first like because it is revealed that like Adele has been like found, like stalks
stalks whatever is David the entire time he's like out and about. So when they were out in the first episode at the bar, Adele was watching him. And she realizes that like, oh, he has a thing for Luis, for Luisa. And then she like tries to find her like just walking on the street, and then just like tries to become friends with her. And there's obviously signals that are coming from Adele that are like, this person is not someone that you would want to be friends with, or like she's obviously lying in front of you. This is the first time you're meeting this person, and she's lying about where she is and who she's with. Why would you want to deal with this? And then you find out that she is your boss's wife. Why would you continue that? No one in any universe
she wants to be the one to either save Adele from David or save David from Adele. She wants to be a hero in this relationship that is none of her business.
So they're like at the end, it's like, oh, she couldn't save like her mother, right, because of like a drug overdose. Right?
Yeah,
I think that's like the underlying thing, and she keeps having these nightmares about it.
Yeah, and the theme of trauma that runs through the whole show.
And it's like Adele's having an overdose at her house. So even though throughout like the last like 5 minutes before this, David is saying she is not okay. She will kill people. She has killed her best friend. Do not go near her. And then Adele says, hey, I'm going to go kill myself and go overdose and like via text or phone call or something.
Yeah.
And then
Louisa
goes and tries to save her. And it's like, yeah, I guess like if you had Louise. I guess you like should save her in like if you had like some long, like if you did not know the situation, if you had no background for this, but this is a TV show. You would not ever go and try to save this person if she's tried to kill multiple people in the past. And like this is also after a reveal where she tried to like threaten another woman who was flirting with David.
Yeah.
It's just the last 2 episodes just pissed me off.
Yeah, I don't know. I think probably she could have gotten Louise and switched bodies with her, whether she had come to her house specifically or not.
Yeah.
Right.
That's why she drugs herself and then sets a fire as well. So like, the issue isn't that she has to drug her more in order to kill her in the way that she did with Rob.
But she does.
But she does anyway, because it's lucky that she just came over and made things easier for her.
Yeah.
And also, as you're overhearing as we're talking about it, the show also does not treat addicts well. So
that's a good point. Yeah.
Every little thing that you could possibly think, oh, they probably shouldn't do that. Oh, they probably shouldn't do that. Oh, they uncheck all the boxes of all the things they shouldn't do and then do them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bad show.
Yeah.
But it's not like this stuff comes from nowhere. I mean, everything that we've said has been done a million times before. And I think that's part of why it's so frustrating to see it all sort of boiled down and with nothing really of substance added, nothing human, nothing like personal.
No commentary on it. And like, I think media is allowed to exist where like the bad guys do terrible things and win. I just don't think this show said anything interesting about the bad guy winning beyond like shock value.
Right. And it's about what makes that person a bad person.
Right.
The things that make this person bad are that Rob is a gay man who is a drug addict, who is obsessed with a man. So, it's specifically his homosexuality that is the problem. And then the fact that he's willing to kill a woman to steal her body is that, you know, his transness is what makes him evil.
Yeah,
right.
Makes him
and
or
it's
her, depending on how you read the plot, whether she's actually a trans woman and now is Adele and then Louise, or whether it's still Rob, a man in a woman's body.
and there's a lot of transphobic, you know, repetitions and kind of like in when you were iterating what was going on in the show, that's a lot of like what trans people say is that trans relationships are trans people are just well, trans women specifically are like men who identify as trans, or gay men that like want to dress as women, type of thing, or men that want to be in women's spaces. Like it is very overt in the show that Rob is a gay man. Like it is said in the show. We said, like, you know, it's like there's like an illusion in a horrific way that Rob is trans, which I don't think is necessarily true, but like, you know,
but that's a common trope as well.
Exactly.
Is that you'll create characters who are not real trans people to be your villains, like in Dress to Kill or in Silence of the Lambs, where Buffalo Bill, who is literally, you know, killing women to steal their bodies by taking their skins, he's described as not a real trans person, so just someone who thinks that they're trans, which is, you know, it's not necessarily
that much better when it comes to representation in
like
public
it's
media.
just sort of painting over your transgression and saying like, don't take it too seriously. Just
and
a crazy
I mentioned
person.
The Lindsay Ellis video earlier, and she covers this exact same part about the fact that in Silence of the Lambs they talk about like, oh, he's not a real trans person. But like, obviously, any average person who goes in and watches this movie when it came out right in the 90s, right, is not going to understand that or understand what it means. And anytime anyone references Silence of the Lambs, they're not going to think about that. They're only going to think about what the representation of Buffalo Bill is and apply that to trans people. So it doesn't really matter.
It's just the idea that when you do anything to gender, which, you know, in the essentialist view is completely tied to the body and the soul, and it comes with immutable characteristics. Right. If you do anything to damage that essentialism, then you are transgressing. You've become a monster, and Rob is exactly that queer monster. That you know, has been the subject of a great deal of queer media studies.
Yeah, I think like what you're saying about essentialism is like it's sort of key to the whole body swapping trope and genre as a whole a little bit, where it's, you know, this idea that you can wholly transplant some sense of self from one body to the next, and that body will then, you know, take on characteristics of this other thing, you know, like I think there's a Sherlock Holmes story where some scientist is like shooting up with like a monkey genome or whatever. And
wait, really?
Like, yeah, it's like one of the like original stories.
Oh, geez.
And you know, he starts acting aggressive and like climbing things, and it was because he did the monkey juice. So
was this also George
like
of the Jungle? Well, what was the one where his heart was replaced with like a baboon's heart?
Yes, I don't know if it's that, but like that's a it's that like that side of, that sort of idea where, you know, you take a pig heart and you put it in someone and suddenly they're more piggish. That like there is immutable qualities tied to bodies and also the like essence of bodies, the soul in a way.
Hannah, you shared an article that I think you're referencing about this. It's called Essentialist Beliefs About Bodily Transplants in the United States and India. So this was sort of a cognitive psych study conducted by Meredith Myers, Sarah Jane Leslie, and Susan A. Gelman and Sarah M. Stillwell. So just to cite our sources there.
Yes.
And you also shared
Yes.
something. We've been talking a lot about trans women,
Mhm.
but this trope is, you know, about any transgression of the, you know, cis-normative ideas, essentialist ideas of gender. And so you shared a really interesting article called
The Trans Horror Stories and Society's Fear of the Trans Masculine Body by Sasha Geffen in Them.
I think it was a
And
really interesting tracing of, you know,
Wait, the show Them has
no,
trans
the
stuff?
publication Them.
Oh, okay. I was just like, because I know that the show just came out, and it's like, you know.
No, specifically this article talks about Hereditary, and then also a magazine feature in the Atlantic about when children say they're trans, and you know it's very much in the same boat as what's the terrible book that just came out? It's like the transes are killing our daughters and making them men.
It's the classic TERF talking points
Yeah.
of, you know, these trans men don't really want to be men. They just want to free themselves from the shackles of female oppression. They need to be taught to love their womanhood, etc.
Gender.
Like, just really, you know, just not. It's not good.
No, not good.
No.
Also,
but I thought the mention of Hereditary is interesting because I think in when it comes to most stories about trans masculine monsters, it's about a male presence or you know, when you talk about possessions, it's almost always a male invasion of a woman's body. But Hereditary reverses that, and it's now, you know, a woman inhabiting a man's body, but it's still kind of an invasion of a sexual nature.
But it's also because, you know, it's the demon who, you know, at least in the article, it talks about how he is a he and feels like a he regardless of the body that the demon is currently inhabiting. And so I think it's these kind of stories coupled with the, you know, the really base level talking point of like, oh, I'm an X trapped in a Y's body, which, you know, is not really accurate, but kind of gets the point across.
It's
to, like,
very second wave feminism as well. Like the way that second wave feminism also approaches like male dominance is very much kind of like it's very much like that's how like second wave feminism portrays men in media is not like how like patriarchal systems are created. It's more like it's always just the he, and it's always like very specific violence. It's not like the manipulation part.
Right.
So yeah, it's very surface level. It doesn't go any further than that, and it doesn't explore the other things that were created later.
Right. I think it's a lot of focus on the body and of the way that women's bodies are policed. But, you know, stops at the like a woman's body can kind of only be this way. And if it's not like this, then it's like it's not a woman's body. Which I think, you know, third and are we in the fourth wave of feminism?
I don't know.
It's been argued.
I don't really follow that really the wave
but I
numbers.
I would say nowadays most intersectional feminists would agree that, you know, the body and even genetics are not the defining traits of womanhood, and that in fact seeking to define it narrowly, you know, is less helpful than one would think if you were basing all of your views on, you know, the 60s and burning bras and whatnot.
Essentialism will always alienate women of some kind.
Mhm.
Like feminist essentialism will always alienate women of some
Yeah.
type of way,
Right.
or
And I mean,
Yeah.
feminism has been alienating Black women from the beginning. You
Yeah.
know, like many early feminists in the US advocated for women's rights specifically because they're like, well, you need more white voters to outvote these Black men. And so we should have us. Like, it's insane that I, a woman, can't vote, but this Black gentleman can, but with less nice words.
Yeah. Oh, also the movie I was thinking about earlier was not George of the Jungle, but it was a worse movie. It was The Animal starring Rob Schneider.
Oh God.
Yeah,
Right, and Rob Schneider also did a body swap movie with with a woman in The Hot Chick, where a hot chick becomes Rob Schneider.
Both written by Rob Schneider and a guy by the name of Tom Brady. No relation to the
football
Super
player.
Bowl. Yeah.
I want to you mentioned earlier, Talia, that like this is a specifically British problem, but I think that it's I don't want to let America off the hook.
Oh no!
First of all,
I'm being clear. Like the it's a recent the ramp up of transphobia has come about in the UK, and behind her eyes, and the laws that have been enacted are coinciding with each other is no coincidence. But the United States has also not been great.
Right, we've had a lot of bills on the state level that have been introduced, and some that have already passed, restricting access for youths to puberty blockers and other gender-affirming medicines and surgeries. So that's fucked up. And then, as far as our media, a very similar kind of movie just came out last year called Freaky, which was a Vince Vaughn vehicle wherein Vaughn is a serial killer, a male serial killer who does a ritual to switch bodies with a teenage girl. And it's from the studio that made Happy Death Day.
Jeez.
Remember that one?
Yeah.
So this is, again, the trope of how much more horrifying is it to have a male serial killer in an attractive female body.
Mm-hmm.
It must be more terrifying because it skews gender in ways that are bad, that she can go up to guys who are attracted to her and trick them into being murdered.
I mean, like that's the whole point of the whole derogatory term, like trap, that gets thrown at trans women all the time, is that trans women, not to toot our own horns, are very, very hot, because and I can get into it, but like even indigenous cultures talked about how like the beauty of trans people, and like how they are almost like revered as gods in a way because they can transcend the human vessel, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Nevertheless, a lot of trans people are very hot. And
do you feel like you're transcending humanity right now? Are you serving up transhumanism?
Shut the fuck up. And so a lot of that kind of gets translated into, oh my god, the prefix
translated. Wow.
Yeah, oh my god. Gets utilized through trap as
I mean, that's the constant
someone with a
fear.
penis tricking a man to have sex with her,
or just tricking men either for sex or for any reason. Like there's this sense of like entitlement to your assumptions, I guess, and just like this fear, and it's the fear defense that is a legal thing that has been used in courts before. Trans panic, which luckily
it's still legal in most states.
It's still legal in a lot of places.
It's legal in Pennsylvania.
There are some states that have like written it out of the books. But it's definitely still an issue. I'm sure it's still an issue in the UK where, you know, basically people can say, hey, I panicked when I found out that they were trans, so I just had to kill him. Can you blame me? You know?
Yeah.
Right, because he was tricking me into thinking that I was gay, you know.
Yeah. And
The
the
worst thing that a
horror.
person
And
can
like
be,
that,
so.
and that's the thing, is that it's like all of these things kind of always will, like, like trans people are a smaller group of the greater LGBT, you know, alphabet mafia combo. So but like those, like, trans people are the most kind of like attacked in that sense. And if you go and try to put laws or you know, try to enforce these stereotypes and these tropes, then you're going to end up attacking the rest of that alphabet, and you're going to go even further. You're going to attack, you know, ultimately all the way down the line, you're going to hit you know, a cis gay white guy, because like you're being like homophobic. Like the basis of the law comes from like fearing a penis, and fearing then then all the way down the line homophobia, or fearing gay men, not fearing homophobia. And like, I think that's kind of like how a lot of ways on how we combat that is understanding how these struggles will, like, in a lot of ways this is a way that helps, but it's not the only way to kind of build, you know, solidarity amongst different groups of people. Is that this will ultimately like end up hurting you if this gets passed or something, because it will ultimately, you know, come down the line of like hurting gay men or hurting cis women, like what that law in Florida is, where if someone suspects that you're on like a sports team or is presenting not as your assigned gender at birth, then someone can inspect your genitals. And I'm sorry, I don't want anyone looking at an 8-year-old's genitals.
I mean, like,
who's being invasive at this point? You
exactly.
know, who's invading spaces?
And then all of a sudden you're going to be investigating like 8-year-old like cis girls' vaginas, and that's
even 16-year-old people. Like, you know, I think that there are plenty of women. Like, there's a classic example of, you know, TERFs were trying to belittle trans women and took a picture that they thought were of trans athletes, but they were literally just regular athletes.
Yeah, exactly.
And so like it hurts cis women. It hurts like anyone whose body does not conform. And like, instead of understanding that the inclusion of trans bodies like widens everyone's freedom of expression, they're thinking that someone is trying to steal something from them, and it's just very misguided.
And I think that's how to chop it down, is like one of the ways to chop it down. There's other ways as well, but like is like chopping down at that, you know, that bodily essentialism that David, you brought up earlier, which I think is kind of a crux of a lot of this part. But we are kind of, I think, getting off topic in a way of, but we are talking about like serious.
This is the topic.
Things. I know, but like I don't know, getting into like the media tropes part, but like.
I take that as, you know, you're saying we should dive really into media representations now. We're too much in the real world and real problems. We need to escape into the world of fantasy where your gender can be more mutable than even it is in the real world, where gender can be a plaything, where it can be a just a toy to play with in you know, in children's media, for example. I think that, you know, most of your examples that you're going to find of body switching or body swapping or body snatching, most of them actually end up happening in children's media. And I think that's worth talking about, because I think for children, they have a sort of contradictorily essentialist and non-essentialist view of gender, where, you know, gender can be sort of flexible, but it's also rigidly defined sometimes as like, you know, if you wear dresses, you're a girl. If you wear, you know, pants, you're a boy. So because of the contradictions in adult conceptions of gender, only some of them will get absorbed by children. And so they'll start to have weird assumptions about things, and then television shows are often the ones that are reinforcing that.
And the
So
way they
let's
play it,
talk about some
yeah.
kids shows that
So-
have body swapping across gender.
Yeah, and I think like the way that they play a lot of these off is going to be not through how like in Behind Her Eyes where it was like horror and thriller, where in this case it's more comedy. It's a haha joke type of thing. Whether it, you know, and even in pieces of media that we're gonna get to that I like and have like helped me like cracked my egg in a way. For those that don't know, like an egg is someone who doesn't know that they're trans. Some people don't like to use that all the time, but we're going to be using it in this case. Is someone who doesn't know that they're trans, and cracking said egg is like certain aspects, certain media that kind of makes you come to that realization that you are trans. So we'll get into that specifically, but yeah, because I have a whole list of all the things that cracked my egg.
Let's just read through some of them now.
Let's do it.
Tell us.
Okay, well, I mean, some of these aren't body swapping, but like
that's fine.
So I'm just gonna go through this whole list. San Junipero from Black Mirror, Misato from Neon Genesis Evangelion, My Life as a Teenage Robot, Totally Spies, the lesbian couple from Pajama Sam 2. Every time I played a video game, I always loved playing as a girl character. Scooby-Doo 1 and 2. 1, they do an actual body swap. In 2, Shaggy takes a potion that makes him into a girl. The guitar solo in Heaven is a Place on Earth. Kristana Loken from Terminator 3. She's the female Terminator. The album Red by Taylor Swift. Fiona from Adventure Time. Remember when they did like they gender swapped all the characters in Adventure Time? Bowletta from Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga, The 13th Year, the classic Disney Channel original movie about a boy who turns into a mermaid when he was 13. As a kid, I was just like, hey, when I turn 13, I don't want to turn into a mermaid. I want to turn into a girl. And when I turned 13, because I as a kid, I also like did a lot of numerology because I was born on October 13th and I was born on a Friday the 13th.
Oh
so
my gosh.
I was just like, oh, everything's lining up. I'm going to turn into a girl. Nope, did not happen. There was an episode of Wizards of Waverly Place that had a body switching in it. And yeah, that's it. That's it for now. We can get into more.
So I want to go back to some of them because I think some of them are interesting and worth exploring.
Yeah.
The first one that popped out to me was My Life as a Teenage Robot, which is, of course, about a teenage girl robot who's constantly trying to be more of a girl and to be seen as a girl.
But then hangs out with two guys.
and where robots are often seen like as neutral gender or through that neutrality, like stereotype to male gender.
Yep.
That her desire to be a female robot is sort of a trans desire to, to embody a gender in a social experience. And there's an episode where she tries to dress up as a woman by wearing like a skin suit that looks like a Raggedy Ann doll.
I did not remember that. Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
We're
gonna be taking
I
it
think
back,
that's an interesting
folks.
one.
This is flashback time. I said a bunch of things that were like, holy shit, I remember that. I don't even know where that was in my brain cell, and like, how did it fit in my brain? So yeah, we're taking you all back, folks.
And can we talk more about the Scooby-Doo films?
Yes,
the live action Scooby-Doo films.
Everyone really kind of talks about this, and like, even like as I was like still an egg, I would watch both of these movies because like I was just like, oh, I want to be a girl. So like I would like, it was very overtly a thing. I didn't say it out loud, but I would say it subconsciously. Well, I would say it internally, consciously, and also subconsciously. So in Scooby-Doo 1, I'll kind of go through the plot of the movie. Written and directed by James Gunn, who's one of my favorite directors and writers, screenwriters. It is live action Scooby-Doo where the Scooby-Doo gang goes to an island, like an amusement park island,
there's a curse where people's souls leave their bodies and then they get inhabited by monsters. But if you kick out the monster soul, then you're like an empty vessel that can have any soul stuffed into it. And so Fred is in Daphne's body.
Mm-hmm. That's the first one.
And famously he
that's
says
where it
the
clicked
line,
for me. I was just like, oh, okay. Yeah.
Famously in his Freddie Prinze Jr. voice, he says, I can look at myself naked.
Yeah.
So it's again, it's like, you know, these are written by cis people. They're not written with trans audiences in mind necessarily. And so often they'll still play into, you know, kind of harmful tropes, but that doesn't mean that they can't be, you can't read against them and have a queer reading of that scene that maybe Fred has not acknowledged that, you know, he's not really Fred, but in fact, you know, a woman who calls herself Fred.
Yeah, and I think
fit into society.
And I think that's kind of like when we're going through a lot of these tropes or media references, like a lot of them are not played to point to an egg like me when I was a kid. They are meant to be like crack a joke at like the whole stereotype of like being in someone else's shoes and like and like, wouldn't it be funny if an established character you already know was actually in another character's body and they had to go through their daily life motions as them instead of like how they actually are. That scene specifically and that kind of interaction was just like, wait a minute, this does not, like, those two things did not seem compatible in my life when I was a kid.
Right. And Scooby-Doo 2 Monsters Unleashed, that was not James Gunn, correct?
I think it was still.
Okay. Well,
I'm like 80% sure on that.
Tweet at us if we're super wrong.
Yeah, tweet us out if we're super wrong. We can also just look it up.
It's significantly more messy as a screenplay, whether it's him or not.
Yeah, and like it doesn't have body swapping, but it has a character. It has Matthew Lillard, who I adore, drink a potion, and the potion gives him a chick's body, and I was just like, oh, I wish I had that potion. Right.
Well, one thing is that it's often like a very normative idea of what when it's a body switch, it's often a very normative idea of what a woman's body looks like. In this case, he gets like a crop
massive
top,
tits,
massive breasts, and very thin waist, and he still has his own head, which I think at least that is sort of changing the body norm that he's still shaggy, he's still got his beard, so that's at least nice.
No woman has ever had a beard.
Well, of course, I'm just saying it's not
like shaggy.
it's not a totally normative body type, and then I think the fact that it's not the transformation that takes place is not one that you could achieve in reality with hormones or surgery, but it's just literally like a snap of the fingers and you look like a supermodel of the opposite gender. Is kind of, it's one of those things that tends to be across most of these examples,
and a lot of like eggs or pre-transition trans women, get the idea. Like I had this, and I've said this to friends. I said this to our mutual friend, David, Alice. Like I said, I want to transition, but I don't think that I'm going to look beautiful when I transition. I think I'm still going to look ugly. I think I'm still going to hate myself, all the other things. But you don't understand, once you actually do transition, how much hormones actually affect your body and how they actually move muscle and fat around in places that actually make you more feminine and in ways that you'll actually start appreciating your body. My depression has completely gone away, and I actually like looking at myself in the mirror now. But like a lot of the time before, I was just like, oh, I wish it was instantaneous. I wish it was just happen like immediately. And I was just like, I want to wake up in like a far, far future, like a cyberpunk future, where I could press a button and I'll be immediately in a body that I like and looks beautiful in ways that I want it to look like. something like, you know, Cyberpunk 2077. But
right, it's a Star Trek episode
minus all the dystopia.
Minus all the dystopia.
I think probably the Star Trek episode is probably one of the first times that this happened, like on television. In James T. Kirk has a woman's mind inside of him as a result of technology. That there's a kind of feeling that like technology will set us free, it will unbound us from our bodies, but our bodies are a big part of what makes us human. So you don't really want, unless you are purely a transhumanist and want to, you know, evolve past the need for such fleshy things. But I like being a bag of bones over here.
Yeah.
We're
but
I think
it's
it's
a bunch of meat puppets.
Well, I like being a meat sack. But it's I think there's something to like futurism and technology being something to transcend gender. Becomes another one of these go-tos in media, especially media written by cis people. Do you guys want to just sort of go through some random examples of body switching media, just sort of to finish us out? We're about at time, and let's just read some, and I'll cut around it and edit out silences, and we'll see if there are any interesting examples on tvtropes.com.
So there is the body switch in Shrek with Donkey and Puss in Boots. Yeah. Yes. Which I don't know if it's trans,
sort of trans
but it's
species rather than transgender swap.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, those are very common too in children's media. Again, it's like pretending to be a dog or a pony can be, as easy for a child as, as pretending to be anything.
Right. I mean, I feel like it's also a common trope in like superhero media, like in comics and TV shows, where some villain will swap bodies or minds or whatever with one of the heroes, and then it's like, this duplicitous trickster,
right?
Trying to.
That's something that TV Tropes calls Grand Theft Me. Because they are stealing your you-ness, and they divide it into two different types, which are the ones that are stealing your body because you have a superpower or you have access to something, or they're the people who steal your body to run around town in your body and trick people into thinking they're you and make you the bad guy, whatever. So those are really like the two kind of types. But in the second case, that often includes being able to steal someone's gender, their race, or other immutable characteristics that they perceive.
Yeah.
I just forgot. We should probably just briefly mention Your Name. We mentioned it, I believe, before we started recording, but Your Name is a Japanese anime that won a bunch of awards for best animated feature film, a bunch of different award shows, well received by a bunch of people, and like the main premise is like a country girl and a city boy switch bodies, and they have to go in throughout each other's lives, and then they fall in love with each other, where it's like that, that's kind of cool and cute and adorable, but like for me it doesn't really do much for me because I'm gay, so I don't really care for these heterosexual relationships. But yeah, I think if you want to check it out, if you haven't,
I've been meaning to watch this movie for since it came out, because I really enjoy the director. I watched his film 5 centimeters per second, which is another. It's a straight love story, but it's like a big tragedy, and I'm very into that. I can do tragic love stories because I'm also not a big love story person.
Yeah, it's very, from what I've seen, it's very beautiful. It's a very beautifully drawn movie. So please check it out if you haven't. But
switching gears almost entirely, there's a Mighty Morphin Power Rangers episode called Switching Places, where blue and pink Rangers switch bodies. And I think it's interesting going back to what Hannah was saying about which characteristics are considered transferable or essentialist. When the Blue Ranger goes into the Pink Ranger's body, now he needs glasses, even though it was his original body that needed glasses. It wasn't the Pink Ranger's body that needed glasses. But you can transfer glasses along with your soul, your poor eyesight, or your nerdiness, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, there's also just on TV tropes as well, there's the trope of familial body snatcher, where, someone snatches bodies of younger generations to sort of achieve some kind of immortality, which, I think like that was part of the Get Out premise, was that, these white people would continue to live forever through these black bodies.
Oh my God, Star Wars is on here, Rise of Skywalker. Oh, I hate that movie. Oh my God.
Wait, Rise of Skywalker had a body switch?
That was the whole point of Palpatine's plan.
Right, but he doesn't do it, right?
No, it doesn't go. Palpatine tries this on his granddaughter, Rey, trying to force her to strike him down with all of her hatred, though it's implied he would have taken Kylo Ren if he killed her, and he himself is an amalgamation of all previous Sith Masters. I don't know. This is stupid. I don't like
it. I think it's interesting because often when, a hero's body is seized by a villain, they get sexier. That's the coding for villain, is just
right. Remember when Cassandra goes into David Tennant's body in the Doctor Who episode New Earth?
Yeah.
That was weird.
Well, and Rose's body.
First Rose's body, then David Tennant's body. But when she's in David Tennant's body, boy, does he flaunt it a little bit more than usual. I guess not much more than usual.
I mean, it's interesting because I feel like this trope is usually either, it's often a comedy trope where, haha, isn't it so wild to see someone who's so different have to act a certain way or be stuck in a body that feels wrong to them. Cue the laugh track. But then there's also a lot of stories of body snatching and, possession in horror. Because I think there's a lot of fear around not having control over your own body anymore, or the fear that your body is desired by someone else in a predatory way. And I think those fears often do get, as we've said for most of this cast, get transplanted onto trans women and men, in that, their goal is to gain access to something that is yours. And I think people feel very possessive over their conceptions of gender, just because it is often something that's taught really, really young. I'm currently in the interesting experience of working for a family that has non-binary parents and a non-binary child, who has been raised non-binary. And, so many of the other kids their age care a lot about gender. This kid gives zero craps, they're like, I'm not a boy, I'm not a girl, I don't care, it's fine, I'll figure it out. Like you'll ask them and they'll just be like, I'm they. But, occasionally one day they'll go, I boy, or I girl, but then it'll always revert back, there's this free expression that exists, and there's a freeness in their presentation that's afforded to them that is not afforded to most people growing up, and especially not in the past. So, at least for me, that's some hope for the future. And some interesting ways that, if more people are sort of being brought up like this, are we going to see people being more critical of these narratives? And are we going to see people creating their own narratives that contradict the negative associations that a lot of these media have presented us with.
Right.
I
think that, you know, that's one element to it, but I think for a lot of the, especially the children's media, but also some of the adult media, like body switching is about seeing things through other people's perspectives in like a very literal way. And it's just like, you know, the original Freaky Friday, it's a generational difference in perspective, but these other, you know, types of media are doing it as a gender perspective, not realizing that there actually are people who have experienced what it is to live in society as a man and as a woman. You know, that it's totally plausible to have those things. You don't need a magical element to experience things in 2 different ways or 3 different ways or a million different ways based on how society treats you. So like, I don't know, you know, there's a Jimmy Neutron episode where Cindy and Jimmy switch, and then it ends with them sorting all of their individual personality traits into each other's bodies via computer, which is such an interesting visualization. And then there's an idea that because all of their things were so scrambled and mixed up, all of their personality traits, that one of them could have been deleted or left in and then transformed the person permanently. So in the end, there's one personality trait that's like dislikes girls who dislike boys who dislike girls who dislike boys, and it just has to do with the fact that they have this sexual, you know, prepubescent tension of like, I don't like girls, you know, kind of thing. But that gets deleted, and so then their personality through technology and through like transhumanism, through gender bending, you know, something evolves. Is permanently mutated.
So
is interesting.
So yeah, combining all of what we've already been talking about, it's really interesting kind of going even 100 years back, because
we're
referencing another YouTuber again. There's an H Bomber Guy video about why like queer people love H.P. Lovecraft. And I have read every single H.P. Lovecraft story, and I think that's kind of like an honor for myself. But you know, there's and it's interesting because there are 2 stories that actively talk about body switching or do the hereditary thing. There's the case of Charles Dexter Ward, where a ancestor of the main character is trying to possess his modern day self, and by modern day it's like 1920 something. And then there's the thing on the doorstep, which is about a woman possessing another character in the story and like controlling his body and like them switching bodies. So it's very interesting that like these same tropes are 100 years old and like still replicated in like almost exact same fashion today. Yeah, it's just very interesting. Like the thing on the doorstep is very familiar to actually Behind Her Eyes, I think. Someone notices a change in someone's behavior. Like the main character's friend is like all chill and stuff, and then this woman dies, and then he what's it called? And then the main character's friend is like acting weird, and it turns out the woman that died, who was his friend's wife, possessed his body, and that his body and that his soul is inside her dead body. So it's basically Behind Her Eyes. And the reason why it's called The Thing on the Doorstep is because there is the main character opens the door and there's this like skeletal corpse on the doorstep, and like the twist is that actually it's his friend possessing the woman's, like his wife's body on the corpse, on the stoop. Yeah,
wild. Okay.
Yeah, this was written in 1933.
Honestly, more interesting than Behind Her Eyes already.
Absolutely.
There's
way more
skeleton that's alive.
Yeah, it's way more interesting. And then I mentioned Case of Charles Dexter Ward, which was very boring in my personal opinion, compared to other Lovecraft stories. But like these tropes are not new things. These tropes have been around for a very, very, very long time.
Yeah, absolutely.
One thing that we haven't really touched on is that a lot of times the body switching happens within the family. That's because a lot of these are deriving themselves from Freaky Friday, the
Mm-hmm.
original Disney film. And so, in Gravity Falls, there's an episode where the two twins switch bodies, and they
Mm-hmm.
react with absolute like horror, like vomiting and like freaking out, and there's a lot of weird stuff there. But then of course it's about them learning to see things from each other's perspectives, again bridging the sibling rivalry gap. It's not a let's prove who has it worse, boys or girls kind of thing, which
Though
it
it's
is in a lot of
sometimes,
It
other.
sometimes
yeah.
does do that.
There's also like Fairly Odd Parents does this kind of thing a lot. There's an episode where Timmy turns into a girl in order to spy on his crush and
One of my
figure out
favorite
what
episodes.
she
It's
what
a
she
great
likes.
episode.
One of my favorite episodes. I don't know why, but it is.
Well, I mean, I think it's a
Couldn't
very
imagine.
I mean, it's very obvious. That's why it's.
I think it's a very Gen X, perception of like what kinds of lessons you can take away. Because of course,
Mhm.
what Timmy realizes is that girls are okay to like boy things, and boys are okay to like girl things. So
Mhm.
that's a good lesson for children to learn. But does it not still reinforce the idea that
There are girl
there
things and boy
are
things.
right, and that to embrace something that's a little bit different does otherize you and does set you apart, whether it should or shouldn't. They're implying that it does.
Mhm.
um, there's also an episode where Timmy switches bodies with his mother and experiences the difficulties of motherhood again. Freaky Friday, but this time
Yeah.
with two different bodies of different
Yeah.
genders.
Yeah. And I mean, it's usually to learn a lesson of some
Of
kind
course,
too.
yeah.
A lot of these kid shows ones. Sorry, Talia.
Yeah, no, then there's was as I mentioned in my list of things that cracked my egg, the episode of Wizards of Waverly Place where the dad teaches the three kids a spell that makes you body switch. I remember when I saw the ad for this episode, like because I was a little kid and I was just like, oh, I want to watch that episode. And then they get into hijinks because they do it throughout the entire episode, and they're like messing up their social lives and all their friends, and it's like, oh, she was gonna be invited to like this cool party with this guy, and because they switched bodies, she made a fool of herself and didn't get to go to the party. Oops, siblings, you gotta love them.
And then the last thing that I personally feel the need to bring up, although we can continue the conversation further, the last thing that I want to bring up is in more adult media that deals with this trope, they tend to fall into this thing of when men inhabit women's bodies, they want to touch themselves. There's an erotic pleasure to inhabiting a woman's body. And
the
so, if Peter Griffin,
of it all.
Yeah,
right. If Peter Griffin inhabits Lois's body, he's going to play with her, her breasts.
Look, I love playing with my tits all day, but that is one aspect of me loving who I am.
Right. It's the same thing with, Fred saying, I get to look at myself naked or whatever. And, of course, like there's an erotic, sense of this to queer gender can be an erotic sort of thing. There's like pornographic or erotic media dealing with body switching in a big way that don't necessarily reckon with actual trans bodies in any way, because they're able to bypass them with some kind of magic button that changes your gender automatically. But I think as we move forward, I think first of all, I think a lot of people are going to shy away from using this trope. I think people are more or less going to steer clear, and maybe that's a mistake.
I think it's interesting because I want to bring up Sense8 as sort of like a counter argument to
this is going to be good. I like this. Yes, this is something that I should have mentioned because I never actually watched Sense8 yet, and I should.
Oh,
I know it's weird.
So why would you have brought it up if you haven't watched it?
Because I know what happens in it, and I know that this concept is it's like why Sense8 is so positive amongst like why trans people do enjoy Sense8. is
beyond just the
anything
fact
away.
that there is a trans woman in it who
yeah.
is awesome. And directed
And
by
the
the Wachowski
directors,
sisters, who, trans
They made my
icons in
favorite
and of
movie, Cloud
themselves.
Atlas. So
So just like that show is about this idea of, it's not so much body switching, but body sharing, which is like, to me at least, feels like this very interesting communal sort of communist
exactly.
future of the trope, where it's not your body or my body, it's our body together, and like you can draw boundaries where you need to or want to, but the idea is that you become so intimately close with these people and that you experience their bodies the way they do and the way other people, and like the way you might.
It's sort of a humanist transhumanism where, yes, we become part of a hive mind, but it's not technologized. It's not purely digital and in non-flesh. It's a humanistic,
but it talks about
transhumanism.
Right. Like it talks about the joy of
being
that
with
experience
another or being with others. It's about community, and it also like inadvertently talks about like gender fluidity and non-binariness, and like this beautiful future of like everyone collectively sharing and working together in a community, and also being with each other and expressing and understanding each other's genders in a beautiful way. I have not fortunately been like in an experience where I can romantically be with somebody else who is trans yet, because of a pandemic. But from what I've heard, it's very much like I'm seeing somebody as they want to be seen, and somebody seeing me the way I want to be seen. And that's just like one piece of just like what Sense8 kind of covers. And it's very beautiful and touching.
I think, and it also talks about the dangers and the thrill, and adds like a sense of drama to the whole thing. So it's not just
like Animorphs that you can get stuck?
No. There's like
this
bad guys,
who
are like hunting you down.
They have to team up and stuff, and like
want to stop people.
They
from
combine all
power.
of their like kick-ass like martial arts skills together, and they like work together to like.
They all are skilled in different areas.
Areas, and they work together to do that. It's very cool.
And it's great because you get simultaneous climaxes and different plot lines happening between like, because it's a pod of like 8 of them or whatever. And it works very well. I personally love the show. If you haven't watched Sense8, do it. It's sad that it ended, but I think it ended pretty well, all things considered.
Yeah, and I think like another Wachowski sisters stint, The Matrix, I mean, was supposed to talk about this essentially. Like the whole premise of it was supposed to be transcending like the body that you've created and the body that was like made for you in the Matrix, and then transcending that. And that covers a lot of like interesting stuff. And like it's interesting that Agent Smith always dead names Neo by calling Neo Mr. Anderson, but never Neo. It's just like little things like that. But
doesn't he becomes sort of multi-gender in absorbing the fortune teller. I haven't seen this film in a very long time.
I think the way that Agent Smith is supposed to be an AI. It's supposed to be
but he goes around turning women into Mr. Smith. Are there any other major examples of this that you would feel remiss if you didn't get a chance to mention them?
Oh my gosh.
I mean,
anything else from your egg sheet?
Yeah, I mean, we alluded to Freaky Friday, but for me, Freaky Friday, like, it didn't unveil anything. I mean, like, it was a movie I did enjoy, but it didn't, like, I don't think it cracked my egg as much as, say, the other things. I think There's the idea of like Timmy becoming a girl, where it's not necessarily like switching bodies, but transforming into, say, a girl, where like that's also like an aspect of like media in like its own little pocket that's like tangential to this in a way that I also like appreciated and stuff and like watched a lot of. I mean, I mentioned Totally Spies, but I don't think this had any body switching and stuff. I just liked it a lot because it was.
I bet you there's a body switching episode of
probably,
Totally Spies.
But like, I enjoyed it because like it was a bunch of like hot girls in like high school who were like, and I was just like, oh my god, I'm in middle school. I want to be a hot girl in high school and also be like a secret spy. Like that's so cool. That's awesome. Right. I love that.
Hell yeah.
I love that for them.
All right. I think that is we've had a very varied conversation. We've covered a lot of topics. There's no possible way that we could cover every single example of gender-related body switching media. So please tweet at us at Talking Tropes and let us know what your favorite was, whether this you consider this to be trans media, whether you don't consider it to be trans representation, whether it cracked your egg or whether it makes you sick. Let us know.
Did you crawl back inside?
Would you crawl back inside? Yeah. And,
but we're really interested to hear any feedback that you have, and we're going to talk about more trans body swapping media next week when we talk about Prelude to a Kiss for our Standing Stanley Tucci series.
Oh yeah. Wait, what?
Prelude to a Kiss, Meg Ryan and Alec Baldwin, and then Meg Ryan switches bodies with an old man.
Old man.
Okay.
Right before their wedding, based on.
We forgot to talk about The Cobbler. Everyone's favorite movie, The Cobbler.
The Cobbler with Adam Sandler.
That was the whole thing. Is that he literally walks in someone else's shoes.
Right.
He possesses, like he becomes the person who has the shoes. Like that's
you got
I'm
it.
what's known as a fake. I'm what's known as a fake Adam Sandler fan because I mainly only like him in Uncut Gems. So absolutely fake and not valid. That's me. But yeah, check us out next week. Talia, is there anything that you want to plug or say?
You can follow me on Twitter at the Pizza Taco, where I post mainly me being sad and me trying to vibe. I know the dialectics of that are very interesting.
And Marxism. Lots of
Marxism, yeah.
Lots of Trotskyism.
Marxism, me being sad, trying to vibe, and then memes. So if you like any or all of those things, please follow me on Twitter at the Pizza Taco, where we can talk about all these fun, beautiful things.
Thank you again so much for being on. We couldn't have done it without your insight.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, and we'd love to have you back if you have any ideas in the future for tropes for us to talk about.
Definitely. I consume media all the time because I'm always online because I have nothing better to do. I am incredibly mentally ill. And I'm probably going to find something that really ticks me off. And it's like, oh, I notice a lot of media does this. And then
if you do, and any of you out there do as well, you can tweet at us at Talking Tropes and maybe we'll get to it in the future. See you guys.
And check out Behind Her Eyes on Netflix, but actually don't.